In today's video, we explore a story that tests the delicate borders between love, loneliness, and trust, and how sometimes the people closest to us can unknowingly reflect our deepest wounds. The story begins on an evening when silence filled the walls of a house that had long forgotten laughter. Steam curled through the air of a small bathroom like a soft sigh, clinging to the mirror until my reflection blurred into mist. I had just stepped out of the bath, the kind of long soak I took to quiet the noise in my mind. The noise that came from too many empty dinners, too many phone calls that ended with "I'll be home soon." I reached for my towel, wrapping it tightly around me as if the warmth itself could hold me together. That's when I heard it, a soft, deliberate knock. "Mom," came the voice from the other side of the door. It was calm. Too calm. I frowned slightly. "Yes. Can I talk to you about something?" he asked after a pause. "It's about school." There was something rehearsed in his tone, like he had played this moment over and over in his head before finally knocking. I pulled the towel a little tighter and cracked open the door. A ribbon of steam escaped into the hallway, curling around the light like a veil. My son stood there, tall now, a textbook clutched against his chest. He looked older, sharper features, tired eyes shadowed by sleepless nights spent over anatomy charts. My son was in his final year of medical school, walking the same path I had once taken. And in him, I saw everything I used to be, determined, idealistic, wanting to fix the world one person at a time. "What's going on?" I asked softly. He shifted his weight. "It's anatomy," he murmured. "The exam's in 2 days and I don't get why it's bothering me so much. I keep second-guessing myself." I smiled faintly and stepped aside. "Come. Let's look at it together." He sat at the edge of my bed, flipping through pages filled with the intricate map of the human body, muscles, nerves, veins. All the silent architecture of life. "It's not the material," he said finally, his voice low. "It's what it means. Every time I look at these diagrams, I think about how people trust doctors, trust us, with the most private parts of their lives. How do you handle that, Mom? How do you not feel too much?" His question hit deeper than I expected. I sat beside him slowly, careful to keep my towel wrapped. "You don't ever really separate your emotions," I said quietly. "You just learn how to carry them without letting them crush you. You stay professional, but you never stop feeling." He nodded, staring down at the pages. "I thought I could handle everything," he whispered. "But lately it feels like the line between caring and getting too involved is getting blurry." My heart tightened. He wasn't just talking about medicine. "That line gets blurry for all of us," I replied softly. "It means you still have empathy, and that's not a weakness. But you have to learn where to draw the boundary." He nodded again. "I trust you the most with this kind of stuff," he said quietly. "You always make sense of things when I can't." Those words, "I trust you the most," stayed with me long after he left. When the door closed, I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the fog slowly fading from the mirror. Trust is beautiful, but it can also be dangerous when two lonely souls lean too much on each other. Our house had been silent for years. My husband, or the man who once was, lived between airport lounges and boardrooms, his life swallowed by business calls and hotel bookings. At first, I told myself it was temporary. That success required sacrifice. That distance was proof of dedication. But one day, I realized the distance had become our normal. Dinner alone. Birthdays on video calls. An untouched half of the bed that never moved. And somewhere in that quiet space, my son had started to fill the silence. He brought me coffee late at night. He asked how my day had gone. He noticed when I was tired, things his father hadn't noticed in years. It wasn't intentional. It was survival. Two lonely people, trying to fill the absence of one. But lately, that closeness had started to change. I didn't know how or when. Maybe it was the way he started speaking to me like an equal, not a child. Maybe it was how much he reminded me of the man his father used to be. Or maybe it was me, too tired, too lonely, too starved for connection to notice that I had started depending on him emotionally more than I should. That week felt endless. He'd been polite, but distant. Quiet in a way that left me wondering if I had done something wrong. Then on Friday, I saw his name on the clinic's appointment schedule. He had booked a consultation with me. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Maybe it was a research topic, a class project. But when he walked into my office that afternoon, I could tell it wasn't about school. He looked exhausted, nervous. The kind of nervous that comes from something heavy sitting on your chest. I need your advice, he said. But not as my mother. As a doctor. His voice trembled slightly. Okay, I said slowly. He started explaining. A patient case, he said. Someone whose illness reminded him of something too close to home. How he'd been losing sleep. How empathy had started turning into guilt. And as he spoke, I saw myself 20 years ago, standing in a cold hospital corridor, trying not to cry after losing a patient I had grown too attached to. It's normal to feel that way, I said softly. It means you care. But caring too much can break you if you don't find balance. He nodded, his expression unreadable. That's what I'm scared of. Losing control of what I feel. Losing who I am. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't talking about a patient. He was talking about us. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt heavy, like every wall was holding a secret. I sat in the living room, the lamp casting a pool of gold light around me. Love, I thought, can sometimes disguise itself as care. And care can become dependence before you realize it. He had grown up under my shadow, my expectations, my guidance. And because his father had always been away, I had become his emotional anchor, his only constant. And in trying to be his strength, I had become his world. That was my mistake. The next morning, I tried to make things normal. Breakfast. Small talk. Weather. But he was quiet. His eyes followed me in a way that wasn't uncomfortable. Just searching. Like he wanted reassurance that everything was fine. Finally, he spoke. Mom, he said softly. Do you ever feel like you've been carrying someone else's emotions for too long? I froze. He wasn't accusing me. He was confessing. Sometimes, I said carefully. It happens when you love someone deeply. You start trying to fix their pain, even when it's not your job. He smiled sadly. Yeah, I think that's what I've been doing with you. Those words pierced deeper than any argument ever could. When Dad left, he continued, I wanted to make things easier for you. But somewhere along the way, I think I forgot what was mine to carry. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. That's not your fault, I whispered. It's mine. I leaned on you when I shouldn't have. I made you grow up too fast. He looked down, his jaw tense. We both did what we had to do to survive. For the first time in years, we didn't speak as mother and son. We spoke as two people. Both lonely, both tired, both guilty of needing too much from each other. That conversation changed everything. Over the next few weeks, we rebuilt boundaries. Awkwardly, at first. But honestly, we still talked, but the weight was gone. I encouraged him to go out, spend time with friends, reconnect with life outside of our quiet home. And for the first time, I did something for myself. I started therapy. Doctors always think they can fix themselves. But healing isn't self-diagnosis, it's surrender. In therapy, I learned something simple but profound. Loneliness doesn't always come from being alone. Sometimes it comes from being unseen. Even by the people who should see you most. When that happens, you start accepting comfort from anywhere it appears. Even from those who shouldn't have to give it. My son had seen me, my exhaustion, my strength, my fragility. And instead of seeing just his mother, he saw someone who understood his pain. It wasn't love in the wrong way. It was love that had nowhere else to go. Months passed. Seasons changed. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. The silence wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. One evening, I came home to the smell of something cooking. He was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, humming softly as he stirred a pot. Dinner? I asked, surprised. He grinned. My way of saying thanks. For everything. We sat down, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet between us felt easy. After dinner, he leaned back in his chair, looking older, calmer, lighter. You know, he said, I think I finally get it. What you meant about carrying things without letting them crush you. I smiled. Yeah. He nodded. It's not about being strong. It's about knowing what's yours to carry. And in that moment, I realized healing doesn't come with distance. It comes with understanding. We had both learned to let go, not of love, but of dependency. He found his freedom, and I found mine. Every relationship carries boundaries, and sometimes those boundaries blur not because of wrong intentions, but because of unhealed pain. This story isn't about betrayal in the usual sense. It's about emotional rescue, and how the line between love and dependence can vanish when two lonely hearts try to hold each other up. But healing begins when you both learn to stand again, not apart, but whole. Time has a strange way of reshaping what we thought we'd never recover from. Some wounds don't close overnight. They fade slowly, like the sound of a song that once broke your heart but now only echoes softly in the background. Months passed since that dinner, the one where everything quietly began to change. Our conversations became lighter. Our silences became comfortable. The air between us didn't carry guilt anymore. It carried understanding. My son had graduated, white coat ceremony and all. I remember watching him stand there, the same shy boy who once hid behind textbooks now looking like a man ready to heal the world. When he turned to find me in the crowd, our eyes met, and for the first time, I didn't see my reflection in him. I saw him, a man becoming his own person. After the ceremony, he hugged me. "You were right," he said quietly. "You can't heal others until you start healing yourself." It was something I'd once said without thinking much about it. But hearing it from him, as a realization, not advice, made me realize how far we'd both come. That night, when the guests left and the laughter faded, I stood in my room and looked around at the framed photos on the dresser. One of them was our family picture from years ago, before distance had drawn its lines between us. I touched the frame, tracing the smile I once thought was real on my husband's face. He still called sometimes, brief, efficient conversations about bills or schedules or things that didn't matter. We had both learned to live parallel lives that rarely met. But what hurt more than the silence was how normal it had become. One evening, as I sat by the window reading, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my husband. "In town next week. Thought we could have dinner. Just us." I stared at it for a long moment. Just us. It had been years since he had said those words. For a fleeting second, my old self, the one that still hoped for things to go back to how they used to be, stirred awake. But the woman I had become now paused and asked, "What do I want from this?" When the evening finally came, I dressed simply, nothing extravagant, just something that made me feel presentable, not performative. The restaurant was quiet, dimly lit, full of strangers with their own untold stories. He arrived late as usual, but smiling like time had never changed him. "Still beautiful," he said, taking a seat. It used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made me wonder why he always remembered to say the words after he had been gone too long. We talked about work, about our son, about everything that didn't matter and nothing that truly did. He told me about his travels, the deals, the meetings, the endless motion that filled his calendar but emptied his life. At one point he leaned back and sighed. "I've been thinking, maybe we could try again. Start fresh." I looked at him quietly. The words hung in the air, familiar, hopeful, but hollow. "Try again," I repeated softly. "Do you even know what broke us the first time?" He blinked. "Work. Distance. Timing. Life." "No," I said. "It wasn't life. It was neglect. It was silence pretending to be peace." For the first time he didn't argue. He just looked down, defeated. When the dinner ended, he asked if he could walk me to my car. The night was cool, the city lights humming softly around us. At the car door he stopped. "You've changed," he said quietly. "I had to," I replied. Staying the same was killing me. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Maybe I'm too late." "Maybe," I said gently. "But that doesn't mean I don't wish you well." He smiled faintly, not in victory, not in regret, but in acceptance. And for the first time, I felt something close to peace between us. Not reconciliation, just release. That night, when I came home, my son was there. He was sitting on the couch, reading something for work. When he saw me, he smiled. "How was dinner?" "Closure," I said simply. He smiled knowingly. "Sometimes that's the best ending." I nodded, taking a seat beside him. For a while, we didn't speak. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore, it was shared. He closed his laptop. You know, he said after a while, I think we both finally stopped trying to save people who didn't ask to be saved. I looked at him, truly looked. He wasn't the boy who used to knock on my door asking for help. He was a man, whole and steady, ready to walk through life on his own terms. A few months later, he got his first residency assignment, in another city. The day he packed his things, I helped fold his shirts, tucking in little notes in between. Reminders like breathe, trust yourself, you're enough. When he was ready to leave, he hugged me for a long time. You'll be okay? He asked. I smiled. I finally am. As his car disappeared down the road, I didn't feel emptiness this time. I felt space, a new kind of silence. The kind that doesn't ache but heals. Days turned into weeks, and life found its rhythm again. I started spending my mornings on the balcony with coffee and a journal. Writing, reflecting, learning to exist without roles or labels. Not someone's wife, not someone's mother, just me. Therapy became less about healing from something, and more about discovering what happiness truly felt like. Sometimes I caught myself smiling for no reason, just because the air felt light again. One afternoon, I received a photo from my son. He was standing in a hospital corridor, smiling with his team. The caption read, "Long shift. Saved a life today. You'd be proud." I stared at the photo for a long time, and I realized pride didn't even begin to describe what I felt. He had learned to heal others without losing himself. That was all I had ever wanted for him, and for myself. Months later, my husband called again. This time, not to reconcile, but simply to talk. About our son. About life. About things that once felt too broken to discuss calmly. The call ended with something unexpected, laughter. Genuine, soft laughter. Not because everything was fixed, but because we had both stopped pretending. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about staying. It's about wishing peace for the one who once hurt you, and meaning it. Life didn't become perfect. It just became honest. I learned to cook for one, to travel alone, to fill my house with music again. And slowly, I realized that solitude wasn't loneliness anymore, it was freedom. Every night before turning off the lights, I whispered a small prayer of gratitude. For growth. For forgiveness. For endings that led to beginnings. The story of love and betrayal often focuses on who left or who stayed. But sometimes, the real story lies in who found themselves in the silence that followed. Trust, love, distance. They all test us in ways we never expect. But when you finally learn to let go of what hurts, you make space for what heals. In the end, this story wasn't about heartbreak. It was about transformation. About how two people, a mother and a son, rebuilt themselves by learning one simple truth. You can't carry someone else's pain forever, but you can choose to set it down, gently, and walk forward lighter than before.